When Picasso made a portrait of Stalin in 1953, it became extremely controversial, though probably not for the reasons you may think. Picasso was extremely famous not only as an artist, but also as a communist. He was known as the most famous communist after Stalin and Mao Zedong. On top of that, praising Stalin at the beginning of the 1950s wasn't controversial. When he died in 1953, plenty of communist newspapers praised him on their front page, including the newspaper Les Lettres Francaises, which included a portrait Picasso had made of Stalin for the occasion. The portrait stood out, and not for the best reasons. André Breton, a libertarian communist and notable critic of Stalin, commented on the portrait saying, "I am one of those for whom the discovery of Picasso's Stalin on the front page of Les Lettres Francaises on Mid-Lent Day provided a good moment. We had been waiting for this portrait for some 15 years, knowing full well that he would not be spared from having to produce it. The only question was how he would manage to get through it. Well, here it is." Breton is making fun of Picasso. He's basically saying Picasso, as a famous communist, has to draw a portrait of Stalin someday. Communists loved Picasso because he, through his fame and talent, legitimized the French Communist Party, but communists also hated Picasso's art. That's what Breton meant by the only question was how he would manage to get through it. How will Picasso manage to make a portrait of Stalin that doesn't offend communists? Why did communists hate Picasso's art? Well, it's because Picasso didn't adhere to the standards of socialist realism. Oh, what's that? You don't know what socialist realism is? Well, luckily for you, I published a video on it last week. But in a nutshell, socialist realism, which I'll refer to as Soviet realism from now on, was the standard by which communists, or more particularly Stalinists, were expected to make art. Art was supposed to be made in a classical academic style, one that is understood by the working class. No abstraction or drawing like a child. This applied even more to portraits because of the Stalinist cult of personality. If Soviet realism was supposed to elevate and idealize the working class, it often elevated and idealized the Soviet elite. This is another reason why Breton was wondering how Picasso would manage to make a portrait of Stalin. 4 years before the death of Stalin and Picasso's subsequent portrait, the French General Confederation of Labor asked Picasso to make a drawing for Stalin's 70th birthday. "To your health," or "Cheers," it reads. Communists didn't like it as it was a bit too casual and informal, but Picasso had successfully escaped making a portrait of Stalin. However, when Stalin died and Louis Aragon asked him to make a portrait of the leader, Picasso handed in this portrait 2 days later. It's a portrait of a younger Stalin in Picasso's style, but we're far from his portrait of his daughter Paloma or this head of a woman, which were both made the same year in 1953. The front page of Les Lettres Francaises had an article by Nobel Prize winner Frédéric Joliot-Curie, an article by Aragon himself, and between them, the portrait of Stalin. The day was published, the newspaper received calls and visits, insulting them and complaining about the humiliating portrait that could only minimize the greatness of Stalin. The French Communist Party published a communiqué condemning the drawing, sparking a crisis within the party trying to find someone responsible for this outrageous event. Some blamed Picasso, but much of the blame fell on Aragon. In the book Pablo Picasso, The Communist Years, Gertje R. Utley says, "The ferocity of the ensuing scandal, which to this day is vivid in the minds of those active then, is difficult to comprehend today. As Kriegel and Parmelin asserted, only art was able to unleash such storms. Not even the show trials and the revelations about Stalin after his death were as divisive as party policies in matter of art." Aragon was mortified and reacted in his usual way by threatening suicide. His wife, Elsa Triolet, pleaded in vain with Lecoeur to refrain from demanding Aragon's self-criticism. Although she had lived in hiding with Aragon during the German occupation, she later described the period following the publication of Picasso's Stalin portrait in this way. "Of all the bad days that we have lived side by side, those were probably, up to then, the worst." As mentioned, Aragon had to publicly publish self-criticism to atone for his mistake. He admitted that some subliminal individualism which borders on anarchism lingered in him. How terrible. He also publicly writes to Picasso in Les Lettres Francaises and tries to explain to him why he has to depict Stalin in an academic style. As for the subject of the dispute, it seems to me that I understood what you wanted to do. Only, you see, Pablo, one can invent flowers, goats, bulls, and even men and women, but our Stalin, he cannot be invented. Because when it comes to Stalin, invention, even if Picasso is the inventor, is necessarily inferior to reality, incomplete, and therefore unfaithful. And so those who love him most, the workers, do not recognize him. And that is not fair, neither to Stalin nor to the workers. You know what would be right? What would be a brilliant response to both the party and to our enemies? It would be for you to make a Stalin now, a real one. It's such a weird self-criticism or like attempt at atonement. It's both patronizing, yes, to workers, but also to Picasso himself. And also it reveals the cult of personality, which is so creepy, so weird, which is one of the reasons why a lot of anarchists, such as myself, despise Stalinism. Anyway, I'm excited to see in the comments how Stalinists will defend this message. We'll see. Am I being counter-revolutionary? Maybe I am. Picasso wouldn't make a real Stalin as Aragon asked, but on the topic of painting a real Stalin, he said in a conversation with his friend Pierre Dex, "Can you imagine if I had done the real Stalin, such as he has become, with his wrinkles, his pockets under the eyes, his warts? A portrait in the style of Cranach. Can you hear them scream? He has disfigured Stalin. He has aged Stalin." And then too I said to myself, why not a Stalin in heroic nudity? Yes, but Stalin nude, and what about his virility? If you take a pecker of the classical sculptor, so small. But come on, Stalin, he was a true male, a bull. So then, if you give him the phallus of a bull, but you've got this little Stalin behind his big thing, they'll cry, but you've made him into a sex maniac, a satyr, a satyr? A satire? A satyr, right? A satyr. Then, if you are a true realist, you take your tape measure and you measure it all properly. That's worse, you made Stalin into an ordinary man. And then, as you are ready to sacrifice yourself, you make a plaster cast of your own thing. Well, it's even worse. What, you dare take yourself for Stalin? After all, Stalin, he must have had an erection all the time, just like the Greek statues. Tell me, you who knows socialist realism, is that Stalin with an erection or without an erection? Oh, classic Picasso, always talking about sex. At least he wasn't misogynistic in that quote. And finally, another quote from Picasso, The Communist Years, when in the summer of 1954, the communists began reluctantly to acknowledge Stalin's crimes, although very little was conceded publicly, Picasso, thinking out loud, asked Dex, "Don't you think that soon they will find that my portrait is too nice?" Nice burn, Pablo. The story of Picasso painting a portrait of Stalin is funny, tragic, and absurd. This portrait destabilized the French Communist Party, pushed Aragon to threaten suicide again, and sent Picasso in a spiraling monologue about Stalin's penis. It shows the absurdity of the Stalinist cult of personality which was rampant within the communist movement, and it also showed the tension between the most famous communist artist in the world and the opposing artistic vision of communist leaders. As I did with my video on Soviet realism, I will end this video with a quote by André Breton, who was, by the way, a revolutionary libertarian socialist. I have to keep that in just in case some people were like, "Oh, you're making an anti-communist video." No. Everyone knows that Picasso's work from its origins to today is the unrestrained negation of so-called socialist realism. The scandal of the portrait has no other interest than to make evident to everyone the incompatibility of art with the directives of the police brigade that presumes to govern it. And that's the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I thought it was a pretty interesting and funny video. I'm very proud of having found this story. It's a really fun story to tell, and I hope I conveyed my love for that story properly in a way that makes you love that story as well. And also, I'm back in the same decor that I was in the last video. Go watch that video if you haven't. But yeah, I think I really like it. I might keep it. It's a bit red. It's a bit It's a bit aggressive, but I don't know. I like it. We'll see if I keep it. But yeah, that's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for liking and subscribing if you haven't already. I bet you already have, haven't you? I'd like to thank, as always, my patrons. All the patrons scrolling right here to my left or to your right, and the ones who are staying static here because they're higher tier patrons. For $1 more per month, you can be a patron. You can help out with the channel. It helps out tremendously. And if you pay just a little bit more, you can be with these people. And if you pay even more, if you want to be really, really contributing to this channel's viability, there's Rowan Brandle, X-Towns, Bone Meal, and Chrissy Chris, who are the top tier patrons, who I shout out at the end of every video for helping out in ways that I cannot thank enough. So yeah, thank you so much. Next video is, I'm not sure. If I can find footage from Bugonia, great movie, go follow my Letterboxd. If I can find some footage for that, I'll make it probably on Bugonia. If I can't find some footage, I'll have to find another. I have another idea for a topic, but that might take different recording sessions, so it might not be available for next week. We'll figure something out, won't we? We always do. So yeah, thank you again for watching, and I'll see you next week, or maybe in 2 weeks. We'll see if I can work it out. All right, goodbye.